Now that we've spent almost 2 years in Southeast Asia and finally last year relocated to Eastern Europe, to Sofia, Bulgaria, I'm not here to completely dismiss Southeast Asia as a destination for expats, but I do want to talk about exactly when and why you should choose one location over the other. In fact, as I'm filming this, I am in Bangkok, Thailand, and I have proof. This is my fuel of today, ice latte from 7-Eleven. Yeah, nothing better than a coffee from 7-Eleven. This is Saturday. I finally sent out my husband Rene out for the whole day to meet with his friend because I don't want you to listen to him talking on the call all day. And that's the subject I actually want to touch in this video, the remote work. How is it in Asia versus Eastern Europe? And because you're watching this video, you're probably also watching many videos on costs of living, because all around the world the costs are rising and we are trying to find an optimal solution that would work for us. And so many people are watching my videos, from digital nomads in their 20s till people who are retired in their 60s. And of course all our situations are different. So for people who are in their 20s and starting their digital nomad journey, and for people who are already retired, so basically you don't have very strict work obligations just yet, or not anymore, I would say that you can basically stop watching this video and watch another one of my videos instead, covering living in Da Nang as an expat. I think that destination in Southeast Asia right now is just perfect. We spent there a bit more than a year, but in the end we did leave. And even though our reasons were personal, I think that there is a big category of people for whom it would be very similar, and I think you will find this video the most useful. So who are those people? They are people like me and Renee. We are both working remotely. We both are looking towards our future. We want a stable home base. We want to optimize our tax situation. We want to have a home office, so we want to have a separate bedroom. We want to have a living room. We want to have an office. Mostly because we want to maximize our productivity so we can work the hours. And I personally don't depend on the time zone, but Rene does. For him, it's really important to stay on the European time zone, because, for example, here in Bangkok, he has to work starting 12 or 1 p.m. and he works late till 10, sometimes even till 11. And after 2 weeks here, now that we spent, I asked him, like, so how's it going? How's it going for you mentally? And he says, like, yes, he can do it, but it's getting harder and harder, and this is our last week here, so the last week that he has to work like this, then we are on a holiday and back to Sofia, and there he can start working again on a European time zone. Basically, if we want to do something together during the week, it's only possible until 12, and then the rest of the day he has to work. So if that's something that rings a bell for you, it is similar to your situation, stick around. So you're probably also watching many comparisons videos. It could be videos on countries easiest to relocate to, or the safest countries, etc., etc. But the truth is, if you're not living in the country for like 6 months, then you don't actually know the current situation there. You're taking your numbers and your information from websites like Numbeo or websites that share costs of living, and you compare countries according to that. You don't even know how actually easy or hard is it to get a residency or in the future passport in certain countries. Even if you did live there, 1 or 2 years later, things change. And I can tell to that because we lived in Turkey, I think almost 3 years now, if I'm not wrong. And the situation there is changing all the time. Residency permits completely changed. Apartment costs completely changed. Cost of living, of course, changed. And actually, after staying right now here in Bangkok, we plan a trip to Japan and then to Turkey again, so I will be able to update you on the situation there. But even here in Bangkok now, after 2 weeks, I already see that things are changing. I spent around a year and a half here back in 2019, 2020 total, and I have that feeling when you get used to how much things are worth in a local currency. So now that I'm back here, I feel that things got more expensive. So when I watch videos that claim that Thailand is very affordable, if you're not very fussy about your lifestyle, if you are in your early 20s, you just want a place to sleep and you're okay eating at a food court every day, sure, Thailand is still very affordable. But if you're in your 30s, 40s, 50s, then things do look a bit different. If you want a bigger condo, if you want better quality food, those are not as affordable as they used to be. I would say that Thailand is developing rapidly and it is moving in a direction to where Kuala Lumpur and Singapore are. That, of course, will increase the quality of the lifestyle that you will be able to get here. But if you were here 5-10 years ago, I definitely will say that things have changed. And I know Eastern Europe and specifically Bulgaria are mostly popular for retirees or people who want to live off-grid, just buy a house in the village, restore it, grow their own food. And of course, there's nothing wrong with that lifestyle. Some people really want it. But the digital nomads and people working remotely in general are more looking towards countries like Portugal and Spain in Europe. From what I'm seeing, those countries right now become more and more busy. It's becoming harder and harder to find a decent apartment for a reasonable price, especially, for example, Lisbon. When we stayed there several years ago, for the money that we were paying, we were getting very low quality apartments. Even though Bulgaria mostly is attractive for Europeans who are looking to optimize the taxes, because the tax is only 10%, depending on how much you're earning, but it is a flat tax. So if your income is medium or higher level, then you will be saving really a lot. I think for remote workers, Eastern Europe and specifically Bulgaria are really overlooked. But I do feel that right now, Sofia, Bulgaria is somewhat undiscovered by remote workers and digital nomads. So I do want to create an expat community. If that's something you will be interested in, check out the link in the description. Because right now everyone is still focused on Portugal and Spain, and they are both great countries, but they do get more and more crowded and the rents there are getting higher and higher, completely unreasonable. So I think right now is the best time for Bulgaria to be actually discovered. So let's look into the first category for comparison, the costs of living. And it always comes down to price, quality of living ratio. We personally don't look for the absolute cheapest place to live. We are rather looking for a place where we can have what we want for the best price. And I already shared our detailed costs of living, but there I only mentioned the basic costs and I did not include occasional shopping, traveling, costs of doing business like accountant, for example. And if you're a remote worker from Europe, I would say that Bulgaria will definitely let you save a lot of your income. For example, if you're earning around 5,000 euro a month, in Germany, in the Netherlands, in Spain, you will giving about half of that away to the government. Where in Bulgaria, the flat tax is 10% plus small social security payments. In Southeast Asia, things are shifting. They are always changing. That was one of the reasons why we left the name Vietnam. In Thailand now there is a destination visa. In Vietnam, so far, there is no long-term visa at all, so you have to do a visa run every 3 months. So if you're working remotely, that day you just basically cannot work. You have to either take a day off or use your weekend to do it. There's an option to start a business, but we looked into it and it was a bit shady and we decided not to. And in Thailand, I always hear the news that it's possible that digital nomads and expats will be taxed. But so far I did not hear any definite news about it. The hottest topic right now around the world, of course, is rent. And even though so many people keep saying that Sofia is so expensive, if you look at it good, it's not. If you know what you're comparing, if you're comparing apples to apples and not apples to oranges, Sofia is not that expensive. Trust me, let me explain. Again, I will talk about our situation. We are a couple, we work remotely, and we just want a separate room for the office. So what we are renting in Sofia is a 2-bedroom apartment with a separate living room, separate kitchen, separate bedroom, and an office, which was a children's room, but we don't have children, so it's our office. And we are paying for it 750 euro a month, which is considerably more than we were paying in Vietnam. But in Vietnam, we lived usually in 1 bedroom, and that 1 bedroom is basically a studio. It's a studio size. It has a really tiny kitchen right in the living room, and the bedroom most of the time is just an area separated with a glass wall. In the bedroom there is basically only space for the bed and nothing else. And in the living room you have a small table which is barely enough for one, and a small couch, basically this size that I'm sitting now in Bangkok. And if you want a 2-bedroom, most likely in the 2nd bedroom there will be a big bed, so you cannot put your work table there. You have to put the work table in the living area. So you will cook there, you will eat there. If you're a young digital nomad, no problem. If you're older and you need to focus on your work for hours, that is a different story. And good furnished 2-bedrooms in Vietnam, they are also not that cheap. They will cost you 700-800 euro. So Sofia is not more expensive when you compare to that, but in Sofia we do get more out of the same budget. In Thailand and Bangkok, situation is kind of similar to Vietnam. For something like 300 euro you can get yourself a tiny studio in the outskirts of Bangkok. If you want to be central, you will be paying somewhere from 700 to 1000 euro. Again, for a tiny studio. In the tiny studio, a tiny table, a tiny couch, and a bed. If I compare it to how we have now in Sofia, close to the city center and a good 2-bedroom, the same kind of apartment, the same size in Bangkok, close to the city center, I would budget 2,000 to 3,000 euro for it. So just like that, if we are comparing apples to apples, in Sofia, Bulgaria, for the same money, we are getting a much better apartment, which allows us to focus on the work, to work longer hours, and that means earning more money too, which brings us closer and closer to our dream of early retirement. At a certain age, I do find it that you just have to maximize your productivity. You cannot just be thinking, oh, I will rent the cheapest possible apartment and that way I'm saving the most. It's not really true, because if we don't have a comfortable place to live in and good place to work, good table, good chairs, we just cannot work the same hours. And that would mean that we are earning less, which in the end would mean that we are not saving up as much as we would want to. So if you look at the big picture, spending more on a good apartment is definitely worth it, but definitely not to a point where you're spending half of your budget just on the apartment alone. Now, the next big category of spending is groceries and eating out. And of course, I would say that in Southeast Asia, it's much easier to eat out, to grab some street food, and it's all delicious, and you just get so lazy to cook that you basically eat out all the time. And it is true what they say, that eating out in Asia is cheaper than buying the groceries. But after 8 years of bouncing around between Asia, Turkey and Europe, I don't really eat out in Southeast Asia as much anymore. It all depends on what you actually want to eat. And personally, I consider eating at home, buying your own groceries and cooking to be the new luxury. Because when you're young, you don't care what you eat. And in Southeast Asia, the food is delicious, but it has a lot of oil, a lot of sugar, and it's what's making it so delicious. And if you want to not just to eat from the street, but also go to restaurants, it's not that much cheaper than in Europe. And groceries from a good supermarket, they are also not that cheap. So in the end, I would say that we are spending on groceries in Bulgaria around the same amount of money as we are spending here in Southeast Asia. In fact, in Bangkok, you do see that, for example, if you're just eating at food courts, you're spending not that much money, but if you do want nice restaurants, especially Japanese ones, for example, then they are costing much more. So I think the idea that it's so cheap to eat in Southeast Asia, it comes from bloggers and YouTubers who are young, who have quite a low budget. And of course, They are eating mostly street food, and it's delicious, like I said, and they want to share it, but it's not sustainable for people who are slightly older and are taking care of their health more, because what you find out when you're older is that doctors are not cheap. So you cannot just be eating sugar and oil every single day. You have to actually pay attention to the quality of food that you're eating. So in the end, again, if we are looking at the big picture, how much money we are spending on our health, we cannot be living off of street food in Southeast Asia. We need to take time to buy our own groceries. We need to take time to cook, and that's for us the same in both Bulgaria or in Vietnam where we lived. Of course, in Bulgaria you can also be living off cheap food like pizzas and burgers. But again, if you take care of your health, I would not recommend to do it all the time. And what we have better in Sofia, Bulgaria is that the apartments, they don't just have a tiny kitchen like in Southeast Asia, but they are fully set to be able for us to cook at home. They have an oven, they have space to buy more appliances, I don't know, a toaster, a mixer, whatever. So we're actually able to cook more variety of meals than we would in Southeast Asia. Another topic that I already touched upon is the taxes, because lowering your taxes definitely contributes to overall savings. In Bulgaria, the situation is that 10% flat tax plus progressive scale of social payments, but they do have a cap. So if your income is very high, you will not be paying outrageous amounts of money. You will be capped at a certain amount. It is around 1,000 level maximum that you will be paying, and it is relatively easy to set up a business in Bulgaria or register as a freelancer, and it doesn't matter how much you are earning. If you are not hiring anyone, if you're only working freelance, then you can be registered as a freelancer. Southeast Asia, like I told you, in Vietnam, it was really shady to open up a business. Basically, it could not be opened on a foreigner's name. Well, it could, but the initial investment was, I think, around 25k plus. And you don't want to just bury those money in that business, where in Bulgaria it's much easier. What about the residency options? In Bulgaria, especially for people who have a European Union citizenship, you will get 5 years in about 4 days. You and your family members and even unregistered partners. If you have a citizenship of a non-EU country, it is more complicated, but there are options. And once you get that residency, you are also free to travel within the EU without needing to apply for a visa. There is also a retirement visa. Versus in Southeast Asia, right now in Thailand, the DTV visa is introduced, which is great for all the digital nomads because it allows you to stay for up to 5 years. Although you do have to do some extensions along the way, and once a year you need to do a visa run, but overall it's much easier than how it was before. In Vietnam, unfortunately, still there is only a 3-month visa, which is already an improvement from 1-month visa. But unless you're working there on a contract, this is what you will have to do. You will have to be an eternal tourist, doing a visa run, border run every 3 months. And you will also have to be applying for the new visa and paying for it every 3 months. And another important topic for us is the weather. And of course, Southeast Asia has the tropical climate. It's always hot here, and in that regard I would say that I loved Vietnam the best, especially Da Nang, because there they did have a cooler season in the winter. It was quite rainy and some people don't like that, but I actually enjoyed it because it could give us a break from the heat, when in Thailand it's just hot all year round, with summertime being the rain season, but still hot. Again, if you're working remotely, if you have to focus on work most of your time, then it can create a problem. You do feel more sleepy, you do feel less motivated to work as well. And I think on a holiday it's a really nice feeling to have, this relaxation feeling. But yeah, if you're working, if you need to focus, if you need to stay motivated to work, that's not the best. In Bulgaria we have all the 4 seasons, but I just made a video showing you around how it is in February there in the winter. and overall I would say that the winters there are relatively mild. If you are from Norway or Finland or even Germany or the Netherlands, the winters in Bulgaria are really nice and comfortable. You will need a warmer jacket and there is a snow sometimes, but many days are very sunny, which is lifting up your mood. For the next year we actually plan to maybe travel to Greece or to Canary Islands for the winter months, like December and January, maybe February. Otherwise, I think Sofia has perfect weather, especially if you don't like the heat and humidity so much. Another weather-related topic is the natural disasters and typhoons, which do happen in Southeast Asia. The floodings in Bangkok, the typhoons in Da Nang. When we lived there, there was a typhoon, but we barely felt it, to be honest. But I do know in some years it was worse. So if you're scared of that, then I do think that Eastern Europe would be a better option for you. I know in Turkey, for example, there were earthquakes, they were devastating, but so far in Bulgaria I have not heard of anything like that. Another possible downside of living in Thailand is the burning season, especially in starting February, March, April. In the north there is burning, and right now we are in the end of February in Bangkok and we do see the smoke and we do wear face masks outside. I do even know that many people who live long term in Chiang Mai and in Bangkok, they do come to Da Nang during those burning season months. For all the remote workers out there, what about the internet? And Thailand is known to have great internet connection. Right now here in this Airbnb we have 600 megabit. This is wonderful. In Da Nang it was also almost always good. There were occasional situations where there were interruptions, but for the most part we had nothing to complain. In Sofia now we have home Wi-Fi as well, and again, maybe in 6 months we had twice that the internet was not so great, but most of the time it's good. So for both Bulgaria and Thailand, Vietnam, I would say everywhere we had no issues. What about the overall safety, which is really important, especially if you're single or if you have children? Thailand is the land of smiles. Petty theft happens, but overall nobody is coming at you with a knife. Same for Vietnam. On the first day that we were in Hanoi, my phone was stolen, but after that nothing bad happened. And walking the streets, I never felt in Southeast Asia that I'm in any danger. And Southeast Europe has a reputation that it's a more dangerous place, but so far in Bulgaria I don't feel any danger. In Sofia I feel perfectly safe. I don't have to clutch my bag in a fear that somebody will steal it. I don't look over my shoulder all the time. Even in a crowd I don't necessarily feel any danger. So in terms of personal safety, I think Sofia is much higher than even some other capitals in Europe. Now what about the social life? And I must say that in Southeast Asia things do seem to be easier. Everyone is just more relaxed and it's easy to find some expat meetup, a speakeasy bar, just something to do. It does feel it's easier here. But I think that's true for big cities like Bangkok, because here are many foreigners and most of them are either retired or just traveling around, so nobody is too busy with work. Everyone is relaxed. In Sofia, I do feel that people are more work-oriented, and for me personally it's good because I also want to stay focused, and it's also very easy to travel. Sofia has a well-connected airport. We so far already traveled to the Netherlands, we traveled to Greece, and we plan to do some more traveling in Eastern Europe. The best part is the no border control situation. Basically it takes you, I don't know, half an hour to get in and out of airport, because we also travel without heavy luggage. We just travel for a weekend. That's where having a home base really helps, that you don't have to carry all your heavy suitcases with you all the time. So what about the mentality in Southeast Asia versus Eastern Europe? I probably don't have to explain too much to you Southeast Asia is all about going easy, going with the flow, being friendly to each other, being friendly, never saying no, and basically this is a high context culture where most of the time people will be super friendly to you, but it also comes with the downside of never getting a straight answer. Versus Eastern Europe has a reputation for being more straight, even less friendly. But right now, after almost 7 months in Bulgaria, I can say that most people are actually very friendly, and maybe not everyone is smiling all the time, but so far most of the times people are very polite. Many people speak English. We have English speaking accountants. Our rental agents spoke English. In some government institutions, people often don't speak much. Well, they speak Bulgarian at you and you just try to communicate with Google Translate. And maybe people don't try to accommodate you so much like they do in Southeast Asia. So far, I can say that we do manage to get things done, whatever we need to do. We don't feel hostility from the locals or anything like that. In fact, some people break all the stereotypes about Balkan people. So I would say if you are afraid of how locals will treat you, because you've seen some movies where Balkan people were rough and tough, I would say just come to Bulgaria and see for yourself. Don't judge the people of the country if you've never actually been to that country. I think it's time to let the old stereotypes die and have an open mind. If I got you interested in relocating to Bulgaria, check out these 2 videos where I show you our lifestyle and go into detail about the costs of living.